Does Utah have the best chance to win the Big 12 in 2024? Someone thinks so, and we do as well. So let's discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Gametime. You can create and download the Gametime app, which allows you to build an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at gametime.com today. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by friend of the show, Michelle Bodkin of KSL Sports. And Michelle, CBS Sports recently put out their Big 12 title odds, and not surprising to see Utah right there at the top. Utah and Kansas State are actually tied at plus 350. And that's not surprising when you look at what Kansas State has some really promising returners as well. But I'm sure there are a number of Big 12 fans who will moan and groan and seeing Utah up at the top of that list. But the truth is, Michelle, I think Utah belongs up there. I would have Utah in sole possession of it. When you look at Cam Rising, he's the only quarterback in this conference who's won a conference championship, and he's not just won one, he's won two of them. He also gets his favorite target back in Brant Keithy, and his soon-to-be other favorite target, Dorian Singer, joins the fray, having a 1,000-yard career collegiate receiving season under his belt. And that's just even some of the passing game options. We know this Utah team's always physical with the run game. The front seven was a top 5 run defense. They return pretty much everyone except for one defensive end and a backup linebacker. But even the secondary, it's kind of makeshift from what some of the pieces in the past have been, but there's some strong returners there. The Utah secondary has a good history of always being good too. Factor that in with some great coaching from Kyle Whittingham. I think Utah deserves to be among, if not the clear favorite, to win their new conference, the Big 12, in 2024.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. This team's just well set up, and for a lot of reasons. You have the quarterback that just makes it all work, and obviously, after next year, they're going to have to figure out what that looks like moving forward. But for the here and now, they have their guy, and he's been great for them. Are there some questions perhaps about, what he's going to look like coming off of almost like a year and a half of not playing? I mean, of course, sure. But the one thing I can say about Cam Rising is he's a very determined individual, and I don't think he's going to, go into this quietly. To be honest, I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. Yeah. I think the rest of the team has a bit of a chip on their shoulder. Last year did not go how they wanted. We got a great interview with Mark Harlan at KSL Sports at Big 12 Media Day, or not Media Day, Big 12 meetings last week. And he kind of talked about that this team is not happy that they didn't make the conference championship last year, because that's been a thing for 4 out of the last 6 times. Towards the end of the Pac-12, obviously moving into a new conference, that sort of thing. You mentioned the weapons around Cam Rising, Brant Keithy being back, Mekhi Bernard's another big one that was missing most of last year, that, really just adds something to what they're doing. And then new faces, Dorian Singer, Carson Ryan, it goes on and on and on. Landon King. You just there's so many people that I think you could name as being potential big time players for this offense. And then you look at the defensive side, the position group that took the biggest hit is the secondary. But as you mentioned in the intro, that's been an area that Utah's easily kind of rebuilds, restocks every year. They're not losing guys because they're not productive or anything like that. They're losing them because they're going to the NFL and they're having success in the NFL. So, that makes it pretty easy, I think, to get guys in the door. and keep the level of play up even when you have to replace that talent. And then, of course, you're talking about a coaching staff that by and large has been together at least a decade, if not more. And that's not to say that there aren't some new pieces. Obviously, Alvis Whitted is the newest addition to the squad. He's going into his second year, coaches the wide receivers. But outside of that, everybody spent about 10 years with Utah. So it's, and in some form or another, obviously, Quinton Ganther is also another guy that's new as a coach, but he played there. So there's just a lot of familiarity there. There's a culture that's been developed. It's very distinguishable, and it's worked for a long, long time. So, I think that makes it easy to pick Utah between all the returning guys, both on the coaching staff and on the team, the actual players, plus the pieces that they brought in. They didn't just pick up anybody just to pick up somebody, right? Like those were very intentional ads to address needs that this team had. And I think they've done a good job. Now, obviously, everybody needs to stay healthy. Everybody needs to play together as a team. The chemistry has to be there, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that Utah won't get tripped up, right? But like Utah has been there and done that for a long time. And this group has kind of been there and done that for a long time. They've been to Rose Bowls. Yes, you can poo-poo and say, they lost both of them. It's still a big time stage. These guys have been on that. They've played in 2 conference championships together. Again, that's a big stage, and they won both of those. So, it's one of those things. And to be honest, like, I don't mean this to be rude, but I don't see anyone in the Big 12 that's any more or less scary than what Utah was already facing in the Pac-12. So to me, it's just business as usual. Yes, the faces look a little different, but they have the formula to be successful. And now the door has opened up even more. There's opportunity to potentially do a college football playoff game, and I just think this group has the experience, the hunger, the desire, the drive, the culture. We can just go on and on and on about what this group brings that makes them the obvious choice in this situation. And yes, there's some other ones that you could potentially look at. Kansas State obviously got some glowing reviews, and for good reason. Kansas has, some special things going on. Arizona potentially could do some great things. Oklahoma State. It's not that there aren't others. It's just, I don't think there's anybody else that checks all the boxes quite the way that Utah does. Now they have to prove it on the field, but that's just, to me, they're the obvious choice, and for good reason.
Absolutely, for good reason. Let's go back to your point you mentioned about the talent that Utah played last year. Obviously, it was more than just the quarterbacks of these teams. But if we look at the Big 12 this year, I think Shedeur Sanders has a good chance to be in the Heisman race, depending on where Colorado is record-wise, because I think he is going to put up some nice numbers this season because of the talent and the pieces that are around him. So that is the one where I'm like, okay, maybe he could be in the Heisman race, even if he balls out and does really well. Utah is a team that's taken on Caleb Williams. They've beat him 3 times. Even Bo Nix. They almost won that game up in Eugene. Yes, they lost last year. That was Bryson Barnes, a backup quarterback. Nearly beat Michael Penix in Washington this past season. So this is a Utah team that's battled against some of the best quarterbacks and teams in college football. They've beaten some of them, and they've lost to some of them over the last couple seasons. And when we are projecting for this season, all we have to go on is what has happened in the past. And this Utah team, the core that is here, they have 12 players overall that have been a part of one of or the 2 that are starters on those championship teams, one of the 2 of them that are coming back. That's key, because no other Big 12 team can really say that, right? That they have guys from multiple conference championship teams coming back. That's what Utah has here. They have the experience of Cam Rising. I would rather trust on Cam Rising to get back to being a conference championship winning caliber quarterback than all of these other guys that I haven't seen do that yet. And it's a Utah roster that is returning so many guys that have done it at the biggest levels. I would rather bet on those returners than a lot of new things that are going on, or just teams that are, yes, running it back in a way. But even Oklahoma State, a lot of people are really questioning them last year. I mean, I'm sorry, but you lose 45-3. That's going to be a loud thing. When Alan Bowman and everyone else was playing there, like that's something that's still going to have a sore taste in my mouth and everyone else's too. So Kansas State, Oklahoma State, all the teams you mentioned, Michelle, absolutely could win the Big 12. But to look at it right now, Utah has to be one I think it has to be 2, if not, in my opinion, 1 for what they've already accomplished so far. So it's incredible to see all these like kind of the hype and all the narratives around. I know like, oh, it's their first year in the Big 12, but like if you look, it's on what they have coming back paired with their schedule as well, which is not super daunting this season. That's where we both agree that Utah is a really good shot. So going to be fun to see if they can do it. And obviously the key to Utah's success in many ways is going to be Cam Rising. It's the biggest reason they fell short last year. He's coming back this year. Is he going to come back in 2025? No, but there was a lot of interesting noise around that, and Michelle Bodkin was one of the ones who had the story on why that is not the case. So we want to talk with Michelle about that in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about the sponsor of today's episode of Locked On Utes, our great friends at Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. If you want to see Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks take on Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics, Gametime is the place for you because they have so many deals that help you get the best deal and best seat for the right price. You can look at their last minute deals where they save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, comedy, theater events, all kind of venues near you. How about flash deals or zone deals? With flash deals, you're saving even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Then there's zone deals. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. There's also the seat views. I love it because it allows you to get a panoramic view from your seats in the app before you buy. There's also that low price guarantee where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, and they have their Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. When you download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, that's capital L-O and all of college capitalized and all together, Locked On College for $20 off your purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Michelle, Utah fans got their hopes up a little bit because in a recent NCAA ruling, they said that you can wherever you transfer, you're automatically eligible. Unlimited transfers, all of that thing is becoming a thing. And as a part of that, they also said if you were forced to sit out, that you get that year of eligibility back. So everyone goes, oh, does this mean Cam Rising can come back for an 8th year of college football? And Michelle, as you did a great job of outlining, that is not necessarily the case.
Yeah. So I mean, it's Article 23 let me look this up again just to make sure I get this right. So
the legal jargon, we want to be,
yes, the legal jargon. And to be perfectly honest, I needed help with this, right? I am not a legal expert, even though I thought about getting into law out of college. I did not do that. Contracts are not my thing. Legal documents are not my thing. Yeah. So thankfully I have a friend that works in college football compliance and understands this stuff because they have to read it all the time. So they pointed this out to me. So it's Article 23 in the Justice Department's consent decree that was put out that had everybody kind of going, oh, maybe Cam Rising can come back in 2025. And how that reads is the NCAA shall provide an additional year of eligibility to any Division I student athlete who was deemed ineligible to compete for a season or any portion of a season of competition during or since the 2019-2020 academic year because of the transfer eligibility rule provided the student athlete. So, I mean, you read that and it's like, well, yeah, that is absolutely Cam Rising. He was a student athlete at Texas as a freshman in 2018, transferred to Utah in 2019. They didn't give him the waiver, so he had to sit in 2019. So that all sounds like him. It sounds like a slam dunk. And that's where a lot of reporters got kind of caught up is they just read the intro to Article 23. However, and this is important, you have to read the small print in these types of documents. So there's conditions A through C, and the one that specifically cuts Cam Rising out of this possibility is condition A. And what that says is transferred between two member institutions more than once. Well, Cam Rising only transferred once from Texas to Utah. There was no other transfers in that time frame. Now, a lot of people have brought up, the fact, well, that's really stupid that people that transferred multiple times are getting rewarded and getting the year back. And, it's an interesting thing. I've seen some smart people say, well, you know what, if he really wanted that year, probably all he has to do is sue the NCAA and he could get that. Now, I highly doubt that Cam Rising wants an 8th year of eligibility. Even if he was able to have that, I really don't think he would use it, to be perfectly honest. But the interesting thing is, so even though the Justice Department's consent decree does not apply to Cam Rising, there are ways that he could actually still play in 2025. It just has nothing to do with that article, according to my source that works in college compliance. So if he gets injured or can't go and doesn't play a single game this year, then he can apply for another medical waiver and be eligible to play again in 2025. Knock on wood, that doesn't happen. I just think that would be a bad deal for him, and it would be a bad deal for Utah. And then the other part of it is he could argue that he had to sit out 2 seasons in a situation that were beyond his control. And he kind of sort of already used that to get this year, but he could probably get another year if he really wanted to argue it. But as far as that decree that was put out, that does not apply to Cam Rising. But there are other ways he could get an 8th year if he really wanted it. I just don't think he does.
Yeah, it's a crazy scenario that we're even in this position. But look, I mean, we're recording this. Rylan Jones, the former Utah point guard, just got his 6th, or I forget exactly what it is. I think it's his 6th year for Samford. He's going to be playing for again this year. And we remember how long ago he was at Utah and everything too. So there are ways to work it and get it through. And let's also be real when we're talking about Cam. Like, I know he's been in college a long time. Cam played in 21. Cam played in 22. Michelle, he got hurt right away in 2020. We didn't see him at all in 23, redshirted and didn't play the first year as well. Like, this is a guy who's only really had 2 seasons of game action, actually.
Yep. So, I mean, yes, he's been around for a long time, but he's still probably pretty fresh, to be honest. Like, he's just had some bad luck with some injuries. And I know people love to make a big deal out of that. Oh, well, he's injury prone. Well, is it really that he's injury prone, or is it just bad luck?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's a question for someone else that's, a medical expert, which I am also not. So
well, that's why we're here, is because we don't claim to be medical experts and don't jump on X and just go like, oh, can't trust Cam. He gets hurt, when the truth is Utah would not have 2 Pac-12 championships if that were the case. Yes, he got hurt in some of the Rose Bowls, but the second one, he had to put the team on his back to even keep him in the game. The first time he got hurt in the first one, Bryson still scored the touchdown for Utah. His injury really didn't impact Utah from losing that game. It didn't make a difference because the defense wasn't able to stop CJ Stroud, something that NFL defenses have not figured out how to do either, which makes me feel better about that Utah performance, and hopefully makes Mekhi Bernard feel better about his performance when he had to come in as a defensive back too for that game.
Remember, he does play running back.
Yes, he does. Those were fantastic videos by him as well. He did a good job of using the NIL thing right where that just started to kind of roll around as well. That was something that was super fun to follow along. So yes, we're not going to have Cam Rising at Utah more than likely in 2025. But you know what's cool about Cam Rising? He likes to give back. He's trying to help establish the future Utah quarterbacks, not just the Isaac Wilsons of the world, but like the 2036 starting quarterback for Utah football, because Cam Rising is hosting a camp. And that is what I'm excited to have Michelle on to talk about here, is because she wrote the story that, at least for me, I hadn't heard about this yet, but Cam Rising did put out that Thursday, June 13th, that's will be for boys and girls K through 5, and then Friday, June 14th, boys and girls K through 6. That's where Cam Rising will have the Rising Stars football camp. Cam has done such a great job of leading this Utah football team to incredible heights. He's the biggest name on the football team. He's well known throughout the fan base, obviously, because of it. And I love that he's giving kids the opportunity to come to his football camp and learn from him and go out there and just have fun time playing the game we all love.
Yeah. I think for a guy that didn't really consider Utah the first time he was approached by them, and he's explained that, right? They had, oh my gosh, why am I losing Tuttle? They had Jack Tuttle at the time. So he just didn't feel like it made a whole lot of sense for him to go and be another freshman with another freshman that was at the time looked like was going to be the heir apparent. So he went to Texas. But the second time around, he takes Utah up on the offer, and it's just been a perfect marriage. I think, he just really embodies, I think, everything that the Utah football program really likes and appreciates. I also think this community, and I'm not saying that you have to be a Utah fan to like him. I have talked about a lot. I feel like our teams here in this state, whether it's BYU, Utah State, Utah Jazz, there's just kind of a standard here. And I think we expect a certain kind of decorum from our athletes, because while we do have a bigger city, it's still not that big. And so you're more likely to run into these people. We expect you to be good community members. And Cam Rising has been at the center of that. He's done some things to give back to the 22 Forever Scholarship Fund, and has raised funds for that in the past. And now he's doing this camp again to give little kids an opportunity to kind of hang out with him and some of his other Utah football teammates. And on top of that, giving kids that maybe get ignored a little bit. He's holding a special needs portion of the camp that's designed specifically for their abilities. And how often does anybody think about, doing something that's on their level, and including them? So I think that's really cool. And I think that's why he has the respect of his teammates. And I think that's why he has the respect of this community. And I think, it's things like that. He may not be the biggest, fastest, strongest arm, but it's things like that I think make him appealing to the NFL too, because he's just not going to cause anybody any trouble, but people are going to flock to him and they're going to like him. And that's a huge, huge deal. So kudos to Cam and the rest of the guys that are going to be showing up and doing that camp. I'm excited. I will be out there one of the days, checking things out and seeing what's going on and hopefully doing a little story on that. So it was really cool seeing and hearing and being hit up about that. And I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's an awesome opportunity. Kudos to Cam for putting it on for everyone, as you mentioned, to an all-inclusive type of camp and environment. So can't wait to see everything that plays out there. And Michelle, you mentioned you're going to be covering it, so we get to follow your coverage for that. But I know even though it's the off season, you're still staying busy, including breaking down the legal jargon as you did today, but even diving into the weeds a little deeper still of all things Utah athletics at KSL Sports.
Yeah. So, if you're curious about anything I'm writing or talking about, definitely check out kslsports.com. Hit on the Utah Utes tab. Everything under that tab is primarily from me. We also have some contributors more on the NFL, MLB side. They're keeping track of where some of our former guys are at. That's kind of fun, but that's the place to go for all my stuff. And then, of course, if you want to follow me online on the social medias, I'm on Threads, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, and it's all at Bodkin KSL Sports.
Michelle, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you soon talking more things Utah athletics. We look forward to seeing you all then.